Welcome to Snoozy Myths for Sleep, where myths, legends, and folktales from around the world help you drift gently into rest. If you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. I'm curious where you are all listening from, so drop a comment with where you're from and what time it is where you are. Now tonight, I'll tell you a quiet story. It's a story rooted in old places and older times, where the edges blur just enough to let your imagination wander. Your mind can soften and settle, like a leaf floating down onto still water. You don't need to pay close attention. There's no need to remember anything at all. Let the rhythm of the words carry you. Let the story unfold around you like a soft blanket. So take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. Get cozy and let's begin. The Garden of Eden. Tonight we journey to a place before time began. A place of perfect peace. The Garden of Eden. You find yourself standing at the edge of paradise. Before you stretches the most beautiful garden you have ever seen. The air is warm and gentle. It carries the sweetest fragrances of jasmine and honeysuckle, of roses that bloom eternally, and fruits that hang heavy on ancient trees. You take your first step into this sacred space. The grass beneath your feet is softer than silk. Each blade seems to welcome you, to cushion your every movement with tender care. The light here is different from any light you know. It glows with a golden warmth that comes from everywhere and nowhere. It bathes everything in peace, in perfect tranquility. You walk slowly along a winding path of smooth stones. Each stone has been placed with infinite love, with perfect intention. The path leads you deeper into the garden's heart. As you walk, you notice the flowers that line your way. Lilies that shine like captured starlight. Peonies the size of dinner plates in shades of cream and blush. Violets that carpet the ground in royal purple. And roses, so many roses, their petals soft as a baby's cheek, their colors ranging from deepest crimson to purest white. Some are the color of sunset, others match the morning sky. You pause beside a fountain that bubbles with crystal water. The sound is music itself, gentle and rhythmic, like a lullaby sung by the earth. You cup your hands and drink. The water tastes of mountain springs and morning dew. It refreshes not just your body, but your very soul. Near the fountain grows the tree of life. Its trunk is massive and ancient. Its bark shimmers with silver and gold. Its branches stretch wide and welcoming, offering shelter to all who seek rest. The leaves rustle with a sound like gentle rain, like whispered prayers, like the softest lullabies. You settle beneath this magnificent tree. The grass here is a perfect bed, soft and yielding, supporting you completely. Above you, the branches create a canopy of peace, filtering the golden light into patterns that dance and play, that shift and move like dreams made visible. In this place, there is no hurry, no need to be anywhere else, no tasks waiting to be done. There is only this moment, this perfect peace, this endless calm. You hear the gentle sound of a stream nearby. It flows with the rhythm of breathing, in and out, steady and sure. The water sparkles as it moves over smooth pebbles, creating tiny rainbows in its wake. Fish with scales like jewels swim lazily in its depths. They have no fear here, no need to hide. Everything in this garden knows perfect safety, perfect love. You close your eyes and listen to the symphony around you. The fountain's gentle bubbling, the stream's soft murmur, the rustle of leaves in a breeze that feels like silk. And underneath it all, a deeper sound, the sound of peace itself, the sound of perfect rest. A deer steps delicately from behind a flowering bush. Its eyes are large and trusting. It regards you with gentle curiosity, then settles nearby to rest. Soon a rabbit joins the deer. Then a dove lands on a low branch above you. As you rest among these gentle creatures, you notice two figures walking along a distant path. A man and woman moving with perfect grace. This is Adam and Eve, the first humans to call this garden home. Adam walks with quiet strength, his steps sure and confident, his eyes filled with wonder at the beauty around him. He pauses to examine a flower, to listen to a bird's song, to breathe deeply of the perfect air. Beside him, Eve moves like poetry in motion. Her hair catches the golden light. Her laughter rings like silver bells. She stops to speak gently to a butterfly, to trail her fingers in the stream, to smell the roses that bloom eternally. They are completely at peace, completely content. Their faces show no worry, no fear, no sadness, only joy, only love, only perfect tranquility. They notice you resting beneath the tree of life, and they smile. Their smiles are like sunrise, warm and welcoming, full of recognition, as if they have been waiting for you, as if you are exactly where you belong. Adam approaches with gentle steps. His voice when he speaks is like warm honey, like summer rain, like the sound of peace itself. He tells you that this place is for all who seek rest, all who long for peace, all who need to remember what perfect love feels like. Eve settles gracefully nearby. Her presence radiates calm, serenity, deep contentment. She speaks of the garden's gifts, of how every flower blooms for joy, how every stream flows with blessing, how every breeze carries love. Together, they share the garden's secrets, how the tree of life offers eternal peace to all who rest beneath it, how the fountain's water washes away every sorrow, how the very air here heals all wounds, all the creatures of the garden know you belong here. They sense your peaceful heart, your gentle spirit. Adam and Eve offer their companionship, their wordless friendship, their perfect understanding. The light begins to shift as evening approaches, but this is not the harsh transition of earthly time. Instead, the golden glow deepens, becomes richer, more soothing, like honey mixed with starlight. Fireflies begin to dance among the flowers. Their lights pulse gently, slowly, like the beating of a tranquil heart. They create patterns in the air, stories written in light, tales of peace and wonder and perfect rest. You feel yourself sinking deeper into the soft earth. The tree of life seems to embrace you. Its roots beneath the ground pulse with ancient wisdom, with eternal love, with perfect understanding. The breeze carries new scents now. Night blooming jasmine, moonflowers opening their white faces to the darkening sky, and something else, something indefinable, the scent of peace itself, of home, of belonging. In the distance, you hear a sound like singing, but it's not quite music as you know it. It's the sound of creation itself, the song that holds all things in harmony, the melody that keeps the stars in their courses and the planets in their dance. It's a sound that speaks directly to your soul, bypassing your ears entirely, filling you with a peace beyond understanding. The animals around you seem to hear it too. The deer lifts its head and listens. The rabbit's ears twitch gently. The dove closes its eyes and sways slightly. Adam and Eve join their voices to the eternal song, their harmony perfect, their joy complete. Eve's voice is like water over stones, clear and pure and beautiful. Adam's voice is deep and rich, like the earth itself singing. Together they weave melodies of peace, of love, of perfect rest. All of creation joins in this eternal song, this hymn of perfect peace. You realize that you are part of this music. Your breathing adds its rhythm. Your heartbeat joins the ancient percussion. Your very presence contributes to the harmony. You belong here. You have always belonged here. This is your true home, your place of perfect rest. The night sky above begins to show its treasures, but these are not the distant stars of Earth. These stars pulse with warmth, with love, with intimate knowledge of your deepest self. They shine not with cold light, but with gentle warmth, like candles lit in welcome, like night lights guiding you to safety. The moon that rises is full and silver. Its light mingles with the golden glow of the garden, creating new colors, new shades of peace. Everything becomes even more beautiful, even more restful, even more perfect. You let your eyelids grow heavy. Here in this place of perfect safety, there is nothing to fear, nothing to worry about, nothing to plan or prepare for. there is only this moment, this perfect peace, this endless love. The grass beneath you seems to pulse gently, like a great heart beating, slow and steady, reliable as the sunrise, constant as the tides. You are held by this rhythm, supported by this eternal pulse, cradled in perfect security. The tree of life above you whispers secrets, stories of rest and renewal, tales of peace that has no end, of love that knows no bounds, of safety that cannot be broken. Adam sits beside you now, his presence like a gentle anchor, steady and reassuring. He speaks softly of the garden's rhythms, how each day brings new wonders, how each moment holds perfect peace, how rest here restores the soul completely. Eve kneels by the stream nearby, cupping water in her hands, letting it flow like liquid starlight. She tells you how the garden dreams, how it holds all who enter in perfect love, how it never lets go of those it embraces. Together they create a circle of peace around you, a sanctuary within a sanctuary, a place of perfect safety within perfect safety. Your breathing slows to match the garden's rhythm, in with the evening breeze, out with the stream's gentle flow, in with the fountain's soft bubble, out with the dove's contented sigh. You feel yourself melting into this perfect place, becoming one with its peace, its tranquility, its endless, boundless love. The fireflies dance closer now, their lights creating patterns just for you, spelling out words of comfort, messages of peace, reminders that you are loved, that you are safe, that you are home. The night sounds of the garden surround you, the soft hoot of an owl, the gentle splash of fish in the stream, the rustle of small creatures moving safely in the underbrush. All the sounds of peace, of perfect harmony, of a world where nothing ever harms, where nothing ever threatens, where all is well. Your body grows heavy with perfect relaxation, every muscle soft, every tension released, every worry dissolved. You sink deeper into the earth's embrace, supported completely, loved unconditionally, safe beyond measure. The boundaries between yourself and the garden begin to blur. You are the flowers, you are the trees, you are the stream and the fountain, you are the gentle breeze. You are part of this eternal peace, this endless love, this perfect rest. Time has no meaning here. There is no clock to watch, no schedule to keep, no place you need to be. There is only this eternal now, this perfect moment, this endless peace. The tree of life seems to lean closer, offering its perfect shelter, its ancient wisdom, its eternal protection. Under its branches, you are safe. Under its canopy, you are loved. Under its watch, you can rest. Completely, deeply, peacefully. The garden's lullaby continues, the fountain's gentle song, the stream's soft murmur, the whisper of leaves in the breeze, all joining together in perfect harmony, in the symphony of peace, the eternal song of rest. Your breathing becomes slower still, deeper, more peaceful, matching the garden's ancient rhythm, the pulse of creation itself, the heartbeat of love. You feel yourself drifting, floating on waves of perfect peace, carried by currents of endless love, supported by the very foundation of all that is good, all that is beautiful, all that is peaceful. The last thing you notice is the feeling of being held, embraced by the garden itself, wrapped in its perfect peace, covered by its endless love. Adam and Eve watch over you with tender care, their presence a blessing, their peace a gift, their love a gentle lullaby. And in this embrace, in this perfect safety, in this boundless peace, with Adam and Eve as your guardians, with the garden as your home, with love as your blanket, you rest deeply, completely, peacefully, safe in the Garden of Eden, safe with the first children of paradise, safe in perfect love, safe in eternal peace. Rest now, sleep deeply, dream of paradise, for paradise dreams of you. Good night. The Dreaming Clay, a sleep story of Prometheus and Athena. Feel yourself drifting back through time itself, back to when the world was young and the gods walked among the clouds, back to a time when creation was still wet clay in divine hands. Listen. Can you hear the gentle lapping of ancient waters against primordial shores? The world has been washed clean. The great flood has receded. And in the silence that follows, two figures stand upon a hill overlooking the empty earth. Prometheus, the Titan who loved mortals more than his own safety, and Athena, the wise goddess, newly born from Zeus's very thoughts. The earth stretches before them, barren and waiting. Mud glistens in the early morning light. Steam rises from the warm ground where the flood waters have only just retreated. Everything is still. Everything is quiet. Everything is ready to begin again. Prometheus kneels beside a pool of the richest, darkest earth. His hands, those same hands that once stole fire from the heavens, now reach for something far more precious. Clay, wet, willing clay that holds within it the memory of what was and the promise of what could be. We must begin again, Athena says softly, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Her grey eyes reflect the wisdom of ages, though she herself is newly come into being. She remembers her birth. The moment when Prometheus raised his great hammer and struck the side of Zeus's skull. The crack that echoed across Mount Olympus. The brilliant light that poured forth. And then her her own first breath, her first thought, her first understanding of the world and all its sorrows. Now she stands beside the Titan who freed her, ready to create. Prometheus's fingers sink into the clay. It responds to his touch, like it has been waiting for him. Waiting for these hands that know both creation and sacrifice. The clay is cool and smooth. It holds its shape as he begins to mold it. First, a torso. Then arms that will one day reach for the stars. Legs that will carry dreams across the earth. A head to hold thoughts and wonder and love. Tell me about them, Athena whispers as she settles beside him, her own hands finding clay. Tell me about the humans we are making. Prometheus's hands never stop their gentle work. His voice is deep and warm, like embers glowing in a hearth. They will be curious, he says, more curious than cats, more persistent than rivers carving through stone. He shapes a face with careful fingers, eyes that will see beauty in sunsets and find patterns in stars. They will love fiercely, he continues. Love each other, love their children, love things that do not love them back. Athena nods, understanding flowing through her like honey. Her own creation takes shape beneath her palms. Smaller hands, perhaps belonging to a child who will one day ask why the sky is blue. They will make mistakes, she adds quietly. Beautiful, terrible mistakes that will teach them and hurt them and make them grow. Yes, Prometheus agrees. They will stumble and fall and get up again. They will build cities and tear them down. They will sing songs that make the gods weep. The work continues in peaceful rhythm. Clay becomes limbs, features, the suggestion of life waiting to wake. Around them, the world holds its breath. Birds that survived the flood watch from distant trees. The sun climbs slowly higher, warming the air, warming the clay. What else? Athena asks. Her voice carries the drowsy contentment of deep work, meaningful work. Prometheus smiles as he smooths the shoulder of his clay figure. They will dream, he says. Oh, how they will dream. They will dream of flying before they learn to build wings. They will dream of distant shores before they build ships. They will dream of each other before they fall in love. Athena's hands pause in their shaping. And nightmares, she asks. Will they have nightmares too? Prometheus nods slowly. Nightmares that will teach them courage. Fears that will show them what they truly value. Darkness that will make them appreciate light. The clay figures begin to populate the hillside. Men and women and children, all sleeping in the soft earth. Some hold each other's hands, even in clay. Some seem to smile, though they have not yet drawn breath. All of them wait. All of them dream their first dreams in the silence before awakening. Athena creates a woman with strong hands. Hands that will plant gardens and heal wounds and hold babies and write poems. She will be brave, Athena whispers to her clay daughter, brave enough to speak truth when others stay silent, brave enough to be gentle in a harsh world, brave enough to hope when hope seems foolish. Prometheus shapes a man with eyes that seem to twinkle even in clay. He will laugh, Prometheus murmurs. He will find joy in small things. The way shadows dance on walls, the sound of rain on leaves, the warmth of bread fresh from the oven. The sun reaches its zenith. The clay figures seem to breathe, though they remain still. The illusion of life grows stronger with each passing moment. Soon it will be time. Soon the winds will come. Soon these sleeping forms will wake and walk and wonder at the world. But not yet. For now, they rest in perfect peace. Free from worry, free from pain, free from the weight of choices. They dream the dreams of the unborn. Dreams full of potential, full of every path they might walk. Athena stands and brushes clay from her hands. Are you ready? She asks. Prometheus rises beside her. His work, like hers, is complete. The hillside is filled with sleeping humanity. All the hope and sorrow and beauty and struggle that will define the mortal world lies here in clay form, waiting. I am ready, he says. Together they raise their hands to the sky. The wind comes at their calling, gentle at first, like a whisper, then stronger, like a song, then powerful, like the breath of life itself. The wind moves through the clay figures, into nostrils that will smell flowers and bread and rain, into lungs that will laugh and cry and sigh with contentment, into hearts that will beat with love and fear and joy. The first human stirs, a woman stretching as if waking from the most peaceful sleep, her eyes open. They are brown like rich earth, and they hold wonder as they look upon the world. Another awakens, a man who sits up slowly, his gaze finding the mountains in the distance. He smiles as if recognizing an old friend. One by one, they wake. Children who giggle as they discover their own fingers. Elders who somehow carry wisdom in their newly formed minds. Artists who see beauty before they know the word for it. Farmers who feel the pull of the earth in their bones. They look at each other with recognition that transcends understanding. They look at Prometheus and Athena with gratitude that needs no words. They look at the world with eyes that see possibility everywhere. Prometheus kneels among them. Be kind to one another, he tells them softly. Remember that you are all made from the same clay. When you forget this, look at your hands and remember. Athena moves through their midst like a blessing. Be wise, she counsels. Not because wisdom is easy, but because the world needs your thoughtfulness. Question everything, but do not let questions stop you from acting with love. the first humans begin to explore. Some head toward the forests, some walk to the water's edge, some simply sit and watch the clouds, already beginning to tell stories about what they see. All of them carry within themselves the dreams they dreamed in clay, the dreams that will inspire them to build and love and hope and try again when they fail. Prometheus and Athena watch them go. They will suffer, Athena observes. There is sadness in her voice, but also acceptance. Yes, Prometheus agrees, but they will also know joy that gods can only imagine. They will love more deeply because they know loss. They will appreciate beauty more because they understand its fragility. The sun begins to set on this first day of the new world. The humans have scattered across the landscape, but not far. They build their first fires as darkness approaches. They share their first meals. They sing their first songs. And when full darkness comes, they sleep their first sleep. The sleep of the living, not the sleep of clay. Sleep filled with dreams of tomorrow. Dreams of what they will build, whom they will love, what they will discover. Dreams that carry forward the infinite potential they held in their clay slumber. Prometheus and Athena remain on the hill, watching over these new dreamers, protecting their sleep, guiding their dreams toward kindness and wisdom and hope. Sleep well, little ones, Athena whispers to the wind, and the wind carries her words to every human ear. Dream of all the beautiful things you will create together. Dream of the laughter you will share. Dream of the love you will give and receive. Dream of the way you will take care of each other and the world that holds you. Prometheus adds his own blessing to the night. Dream of your courage, he murmurs. Dream of your resilience. Dream of the light you will bring to dark places. Dream of coming home to yourselves again and again, no matter how far you wander. And in their sleep, the first humans do dream. They dream of gardens they will plant, cities they will build, children they will raise, stories they will tell around fires just like these. They dream of holding each other through storms. They dream of forgiveness after arguments. They dream of growing old together, watching grandchildren play in the same clay that once held them. They dream of being part of something larger than themselves, a great web of connection that will stretch across the earth and through time. All of them made from the same mud. All of them awakened by the same breath. All of them dreaming the shared dream of humanity. Now, as you listen to this story, feel yourself sinking into that same peaceful sleep, the sleep of clay before awakening, the sleep that holds all possibilities. Feel your breathing slow and deepen. Feel your body grow heavy and warm. Feel yourself becoming part of the eternal dream, the dream that connects you to every human who has ever lived, the dream that reminds you that you are made of the same stuff as stars and stories, The dream that promises tomorrow will bring new chances to love and create and wonder. Sleep now. Sleep like clay waiting for breath. Sleep like earth waiting for rain. Sleep like a dream waiting to come true. And when you wake, carry with you the blessing of Prometheus and Athena, the courage to love fiercely, the wisdom to choose kindness, the curiosity to keep learning, the resilience to begin again. Sleep, dream. Wake when you are ready to create something beautiful. Good night. The Eternal Journey. A sleep story of Sisyphus in the ancient times when gods walked among mortals and the world was young. There lived a man whose name would echo through eternity. His name was Sisyphus, king of Ephyra, a city that would one day be called Corinth. Sisyphus was known throughout the land for his cunning mind and silver tongue. He was clever beyond measure, clever enough to outwit merchants in the agora, clever enough to navigate the treacherous waters of ancient politics, and clever enough, he believed, to match wits with the gods themselves. This belief would prove to be both his greatest strength and his ultimate downfall. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Sisyphus's palace as he stood on his balcony, watching the world below. His kingdom thrived under his rule. Ships came and went from the harbor, laden with goods from distant lands. Farmers brought their harvest to market. Children played in the streets, while their mothers drew water from the wells. All was peaceful. All was prosperous. But Sisyphus's mind was always working, always scheming, always seeking advantage. On this particular morning, as he gazed out over his domain, he noticed something unusual. A great eagle soared overhead, its wings catching the golden light of dawn. But this was no ordinary eagle. In its talons, it carried what appeared to be a young woman, her white robes flowing like clouds in the wind. Sisyphus watched with growing interest as the eagle disappeared toward the mountains. He had seen enough divine transformations to recognize the hand of Zeus in this abduction. But who was the maiden, and why should he care? The answer came to him later that same day, when Asopus, the river god, appeared at his palace gates. The deity's form shimmered between that of a man and flowing water, his voice carrying the sound of rushing streams. "King Sisyphus," Asopus said, his words rippling like water over stones. "I seek information about my daughter Aegina. She has vanished from my banks, taken by some unknown force. I will reward handsomely anyone who can tell me of her fate." Sisyphus's eyes gleamed with opportunity. Here was a chance to gain favor with a powerful god, and perhaps to gain something more tangible as well. "Great Asopus," Sisyphus replied, his voice smooth as honey, I may indeed have information about your daughter. This morning I witnessed a great eagle carrying a maiden toward the mountains. The eagle bore the unmistakable aura of divine power. Sisyphus leaned forward eagerly. Tell me more, wise king. What would you have of me in return for this knowledge? Sisyphus gestured toward his city below. My people thirst, great god of waters. Grant us a spring of fresh water, and I will tell you all I know. The bargain was struck. With a gesture from Sisyphus, crystal clear water began to bubble up from the earth in the center of Athera's agora. The people gathered around in wonder and gratitude, and Sisyphus, satisfied with his transaction, revealed what he had seen. It was Zeus who took your daughter, he said simply. The king of gods has claimed Aegina for himself. Sisyphus's form grew turbulent, his watery essence churning with rage. Zeus, he growled, the sound like a flood rushing through a narrow canyon. He thinks his power gives him the right to steal what he pleases. But he will learn that a father's love is not so easily conquered. The river god departed in a torrent of spray and fury, leaving Sisyphus alone with his satisfaction. He had gained fresh water for his people. He had earned the gratitude of a god. All seemed well, but Sisyphus had not considered the consequences of his revelation. High on Mount Olympus, Zeus felt the tremors of Sisyphus's rage. The river god's pursuit was relentless, his fury shaking the very foundations of the earth. Though Zeus would ultimately prevail in their battle, turning Sisyphus's rage into mere mortal rivers with his thunderbolts, the king of gods was not pleased. Someone had revealed his secret. Someone had dared to interfere in his divine affairs, and Zeus knew exactly who that someone was. The storm clouds gathered over Ephyra with unnatural speed. Thunder rolled across the sky like the growl of an angry beast. Lightning split the heavens, and in the midst of the tempest, a figure descended from the clouds. It was Thanatos, the personification of death himself. His form was neither frightening nor comforting, but simply inevitable. He appeared as a young man with dark wings, his face serene but implacable. Sisyphus, king of Ephyra. Thanatos spoke, his voice carrying the finality of a closing door. Zeus has decreed your time has come. You have meddled in divine affairs. You have revealed secrets that were not yours to tell. Now you must face the consequences. But Sisyphus was not one to accept defeat easily. His mind raced, seeking an angle, a way out of this divine trap. Great Thanatos, he said with a respectful bow. I am honored by your visit, but surely there has been some mistake. I am but a mortal king, faithful to the gods. How have I offended mighty Zeus? Thanatos regarded him with ancient eyes. Do not play games with death, Sisyphus. You know well what you have done. Zeus's wrath is not easily kindled, but one once lit, it burns eternal. Sisyphus nodded thoughtfully, then his expression brightened as if struck by sudden inspiration. "I understand now," he said, "and I accept my fate willingly. But tell me, Thanatos, for I am curious about such things. These chains you carry, surely they are divine artifacts of great power. How do they work to bind the mortal soul?" Thanatos looked down at the golden chains in his hands. They gleamed with otherworldly light, inscribed with symbols that hurt to look upon directly. "These are the bonds of fate itself," he explained with a touch of pride. "No mortal can break them. Once clasped, they bind the soul to its destiny." "Would you show me?" Sisyphus asked innocently. "I have never seen such craftsmanship. Surely there is no harm in satisfying the curiosity of one about to die." Thanatos hesitated for a moment, then held out the chains for inspection. They were indeed beautiful, wrought with care by the divine smiths of Olympus. "Remarkable," Sisyphus breathed, leaning closer. "But how do they close? Is there some mechanism, some divine word?" "Like this," Thanatos said, demonstrating the clasp. In that moment, Sisyphus struck. With speed born of desperation and cunning, honed by years of survival, he grabbed the chains and snapped them around Thanatos' own wrists. The god of death stood frozen in shock. "Impossible," he whispered. "No mortal has ever bound death himself." Sisyphus finished with a grin. "Yet here we are. Tell me, Thanatos, how does it feel to be trapped by your own instruments?" With Thanatos imprisoned, something extraordinary happened. Death ceased to function in the mortal world. Warriors fell in battle but did not die. The elderly and sick lingered indefinitely. Even the sacrificial animals at the temples could not be properly offered to the gods. The natural order was completely disrupted. On Olympus, the gods began to take notice. Ares, god of war, was particularly frustrated. "What is the point of glorious battle if no one can die?" he complained to Zeus. "My warriors lie on the battlefield, wounded but unable to find peace. This is intolerable." Zeus's eyes flashed with understanding. "Sisyphus," he growled, "that clever fool has found a way to cheat death itself." The king of gods dispatched Ares to earth with a simple command: "Free Thanatos. Bring Sisyphus to the underworld. Do whatever is necessary." Ares found Sisyphus in his throne room, calmly conducting the business of kingship as if nothing had happened. The god of war was in no mood for games. "Release Thanatos immediately," Ares commanded, his bronze armor gleaming with divine fire, "or I will drag you to Hades myself." Sisyphus looked up from his scrolls with mild interest. "Ah, mighty Ares," he said pleasantly, "welcome to my humble palace. I'm afraid I don't what you're talking about. Don't test me, mortal, Ares snarled. I can smell death's imprisonment on you. The very air reeks of disrupted fate. Sisyphus sighed and set down his quill. Very well, he said. You leave me little choice. He led Ares to a hidden chamber beneath the palace where Thanatos sat, chained to a throne of black stone. The god of death looked up as they entered, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and relief. Free me, Ares, Thanatos pleaded. This mortal's trickery has made a mockery of the divine order. Gladly, Ares replied, raising his sword. But Sisyphus held up a hand. Wait, he said. Before you act, consider the consequences. If you free Thanatos by force, breaking those chains with divine strength, what happens to me? Do I simply drop dead? Do I vanish? Or do I perhaps become something more dangerous? A mortal who has already proven he can bind death itself. Ares paused, his sword halfway to the chains. Sisyphus was right to be cautious. Divine magic could be unpredictable when violently disrupted. Then releasing yourself, Ares commanded, and I will ensure your death is swift and honorable. Agreed, Sisyphus said, without hesitation. He stepped forward and unlocked the chains with the same mechanism Thanatos had so foolishly demonstrated. Death was free, and with that freedom, Sisyphus's own fate was sealed. Thanatos wasted no time. The chains that had bound him now wrapped around Sisyphus like living serpents. This time, there would be no tricks, no clever words, no escape. Now, Thanatos said with grim satisfaction, you come with me. The journey to the underworld was swift and strange. One moment, Sisyphus stood in his palace chamber. The next, he found himself on the banks of the river Styx, that dark water that separates the world of the living from the realm of the dead. Charon, the ferryman, poled his boat through the murky waters with practiced ease. His ancient eyes regarded Sisyphus with interest. Another clever one, Charon observed, his voice like grinding stone. They always think they can outwit death. They're always wrong in the end. The boat carried them across the river toward the gates of Hades. Three-headed Cerberus guarded the entrance, his massive form blocking out the dim light of the underworld. But the great hound merely watched as Thanatos led his prisoner through the gates. Inside, the realm of Hades stretched out in all its terrible majesty. Rivers of fire flowed through caverns of black stone. Shades of the dead wandered endlessly through fields of asphodel. In the distance, the palace of Hades rose like a mountain of obsidian. They passed through regions of judgment and punishment. Sisyphus saw Tantalus, forever reaching for fruit that pulled away from his grasp. He saw the Danaids, condemned to fill leaking vessels for all eternity. He saw Ixion, bound to his wheel of fire. All were being punished for offenses against the gods. Soon, Sisyphus realized he would join their ranks. They reached the throne room of Hades, where the king of the underworld sat in judgment. Beside him, Persephone regarded the proceedings with queenly composure. The three judges of the dead, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus, stood ready to pronounce sentence. Sisyphus of Ephyre, Ira, Hades intoned, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. You stand accused of multiple offenses against the divine order. You revealed Zeus's secrets. You bound and imprisoned Death himself. You disrupted the natural cycle of life and death. How do you answer these charges? Sisyphus straightened his shoulders and looked directly at the god of the dead. I answer that I acted as any king would act, he said clearly. I sought to protect and provide for my people. I made a fair trade with Sisyphus. When threatened by Thanatos, I defended myself. If these actions constitute crimes, then I am guilty. But I do not repent of them. A murmur ran through the assembled shades. Few mortals dared speak so boldly in the presence of Hades. The king of the underworld leaned forward on his throne. You show no remorse, he observed. No fear. No recognition of the magnitude of your transgressions. This is interesting. Persephone spoke for the first time. He is proud, she said, her voice like winter wind through bare branches. Pride brought him low, and pride sustains him still. Such pride requires a special kind of correction. The three judges conferred among themselves, their whispered conversation too quiet for mortal ears. Finally, Minos stepped forward. Sisyphus of Ephyre, he announced, you are sentenced to eternal punishment for your crimes against the gods. But your punishment shall be unique, crafted specifically for one of your particular nature. You who sought always to push beyond the boundaries set by gods and men shall push for all eternity. You who climb to heights of cunning and power shall climb forever. Behold your fate. The floor of the throne room began to change. Stone flowed like water, reshaping itself into a steep hillside. At the bottom appeared a boulder of immense size, easily twice the height of a man and perfectly round. This is your task, Hades explained, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You will push this stone to the top of this hill. When you succeed, you may rest. But know this, the stone is cursed. Each time it nears the summit, it will slip from your grasp and roll back to the bottom, and you will begin again, forever. Sisyphus looked at the boulder, then at the hill, calculating angles and distances with his ever-active mind. And if I refuse, he asked. You will not refuse, Persephone said with certainty. The compulsion is part of the curse. You will push the stone because you must, because it is your nature to struggle against impossible odds. Because even in punishment, you cannot help but try. And so it began. Sisyphus placed his hands against the rough surface of the boulder and pushed. It was heavier than anything he had ever attempted to move. The stone seemed to contain the weight of all his crimes, all his pride, all his defiance. But slowly, inch by grinding inch, it began to move. The hill was steep, far steeper than it had appeared from the throne room. Every step required tremendous effort. Sisyphus's muscles strained and burned. Sweat ran down his face, though he had not known the dead could sweat. The rough stone scraped his palms raw, but still he pushed. Up the hill, step by laborious step. The boulder rolled reluctantly, fighting him every inch of the way. Several times it threatened to slip backward, and only desperate effort kept it moving forward. Hours passed, or perhaps days. Time had little meaning in the underworld. Sisyphus was aware only of the stone, the hill, and the burning in his muscles. Other shades paused in their own eternal wanderings to watch this new addition to their ranks. Some looked on with pity, others with recognition. They had all been where Sisyphus was now, beginning their own eternal punishments. Halfway up the hill, Sisyphus paused to catch his breath. The boulder held steady, wedged against his body. For a moment, he allowed himself to look back at the distance he had covered. It was significant, more than he had dared hope on first seeing the task. Perhaps the judges had been wrong. Perhaps the curse was not as absolute as they claimed. Perhaps his determination and cunning could overcome even this divine punishment. The thought gave him strength, and he resumed his pushing. Up and up, the summit growing closer with each agonizing step. He could see the top now, a clear line against the dim sky of the underworld. Just a few more yards, a few more pushes. Victory was within reach. His hands found better purchase on the stone. His feet discovered solid footing. With a final tremendous effort, he heaved the boulder upward. It balanced for one perfect moment on the very edge of the summit. Sisyphus stood behind it, chest heaving, sweat streaming down his face. He had done it. He had beaten the curse. He had proven that mortal determination could overcome divine judgment. Then the stone slipped, not gradually, not with warning, but suddenly and completely. One moment it sat poised at the top of the hill. The next, it was rolling backward, gathering speed as it went. Sisyphus lunged after it, trying desperately to catch it, to stop its descent. But it was too late. The boulder rolled past him, down the hill, picking up momentum until it crashed into the bottom with a sound like thunder. Sisyphus stood at the summit, alone, watching his achievement vanish. The frustration was overwhelming. The futility was crushing. For a moment, he considered simply staying where he was, refusing to go back down, refusing to begin again. But even as the thought formed, he felt the compulsion Persephone had described. His feet began to move of their own accord. His body turned toward the bottom of the hill. The curse was absolute. He would try again, because he had to try again, because it was his nature to struggle, because even knowing the outcome, he could not help but hope. And so Sisyphus walked back down the hill, back to the boulder, back to the beginning. He placed his hands once more against the stone and began to push. This second attempt was no easier than the first. If anything, it was harder, weighted down by the knowledge of what awaited him at the top. But still he pushed, still he climbed, still he hoped. And when he reached the summit, the stone rolled back down again, and again, and again. Years passed in the underworld, or perhaps centuries. Sisyphus continued his eternal task, each attempt bringing the same result. Sometimes he pushed with desperate energy, trying to move faster to catch the stone before it could slip. Sometimes he pushed slowly and methodically, trying to find the perfect technique. Sometimes he raged against the stone, the hill, the gods who had condemned him. Sometimes he wept with frustration, but always, he continued. Other shades began to gather to watch his daily struggle. They found something compelling in his endless persistence. He was a man who refused to surrender, even when surrender was the only rational choice. Here was defiance distilled to its purest form. Some of the shades began to cheer him on, calling out encouragement as he neared the summit each time. Others simply watched in silence, drawing strength from his example. Even some of the minor gods and goddesses of the underworld took notice. They had seen many punishments over the millennia, but few prisoners who maintained such determination in the face of absolute futility. He never gives up. One whispered to another, even knowing he will fail, he continues to try. There is something admirable in such persistence, or perhaps something tragic. Sisyphus himself was changing. The endless repetition was wearing away the edges of his personality. His cleverness, once so sharp and quick, was being ground down by the simple, mindless repetition of his task. His pride, once towering and unshakable, was being eroded by countless failures. But something else was emerging in its place, a kind of wisdom born of suffering, an understanding that came only through experiencing the same defeat again and again. He began to notice things he had missed before, the way the light fell on the stone at different times, the subtle changes in the hill's surface as ages passed, the faces of the shades who watched him, each carrying their own story. He began to understand that his punishment was not really about the stone or the hill. It was about learning to find meaning in struggle itself, about discovering dignity in persistence, about accepting that not all battles could be won, but that the fighting itself had value. On one particular day, as Sisyphus placed his hands against the boulder to begin another ascent, he paused. For the first time in countless repetitions, he really looked at the stone. It was beautiful in its way, perfectly round, smoothed by ages of rolling. The surface was marked with patterns that spoke of deep time and patient formation. This stone had existed long before Sisyphus was born. It would exist long after his punishment ended, if it ever ended. There was something humbling about that realization. He was not the master of this stone. He was not conquering it or defeating it. He was simply partnering with it, sharing in its eternal journey up and down the hill. The stone was not his enemy. It was his companion, his teacher, his path to understanding. With this new perspective, Sisyphus began his ascent. The stone felt no lighter, the hill was no less steep, but something had changed in the quality of his effort. He was no longer fighting the stone. He was working with it, accepting its weight, finding rhythm in their shared movement. The other shades noticed the change immediately. Where before there had been desperate striving, now there was something approaching peace. Where before there had been rage and frustration, now there was a kind of meditative focus. Sisyphus pushed the stone up the hill with the same determination as always, but now his determination was tempered with acceptance. He knew the stone would roll back down. He knew he would have to start again, and he found that he was all right with that. When he reached the summit, and the stone inevitably slipped from his grasp, he watched its descent with something like fondness. There it went, his old friend, rolling back to the bottom. Soon he would join it there. Soon they would begin their journey together once more. And perhaps in that endless repetition, there was a kind of perfection, a completeness that came not from achieving a goal, but from fully embracing the process of striving. As Sisyphus walked back down the hill, following the path worn smooth by countless repetitions, he felt something he had not experienced since his mortal days. Contentment, not happiness exactly. Contentment was perhaps too strong a word, but something approaching peace. He had found his place in the order of things. He had learned to make friends with his fate. And if that was not victory in the traditional sense, it was perhaps something even more valuable. As he began to push once more, Sisyphus smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible to the watching shades. But it was real. It was his. And it was enough. The stone began to move up the hill, toward the summit, toward the inevitable return to the bottom. And Sisyphus pushed it gladly, because this was his work, this was his life, this was his gift to the universe. One more push, one more step, one more moment of perfect eternal effort, and in that effort he was free. The stone rolled, the hill endured, and Sisyphus, eternal prisoner and eternal seeker, continued his journey toward understanding. Up the hill, down the hill, forever. And that forever was no longer a curse. It was a promise that there would always be another chance, another push, another moment to choose how to meet the challenge of existence. In his endless task, Sisyphus had found the secret that the gods themselves perhaps did not fully understand. That meaning comes not from destination, but from journey, not from achievement, but from effort, not from success, but from the courage to continue despite failure. And with that knowledge, he pushed his stone up the hill once more, content in his eternal struggle, at peace with his endless task, free in the very heart of his captivity. The stone rolled, the hill stood, and Sisyphus pushed on, forever. Nessie's watchful waters, welcome. Tonight, we journey to the Highlands of Scotland, to a deep, mysterious, quiet loch, nestled between green hills, covered in mist and stories. This is the story of the Loch Ness monster, known to some as Nessie, known to others as just a ripple, or a shadow beneath the water, but always a presence, a mystery, a wonder. So breathe in and let the mist settle around your thoughts. Breathe out and let the cool air of the Scottish Highlands ease you into stillness. Our story begins in a small village, not far from the shores of Loch Ness. The village is quiet. Houses are built from stone, roofs sloped and weathered, windows glowing with soft light. The air smells of peat smoke and rain. There's a silence here, the kind that lives in places with history. And in this village lived a girl named Isla, with long auburn hair and curious green eyes. She was quiet, but her mind was always busy, wandering every morning before the sun rose. Isla would walk to the loch. She liked the way the sky mirrored in the still water, like the hush of the world before it woke. And sometimes she would bring a book. Other times she would just sit And listen. One morning, the fog was thick. The world around her seemed faded, muted. She stood at the edge of the loch, her boots on damp moss, and she saw it, a shape, far out on the water, large, slow, almost drifting. It moved like a wave that had a mind of its own. She blinked, looked again. Nothing, just mist, and the usual stillness. But the image lingered, not in a scary way, but in a curious way, like a half-remembered dream. She told her grandfather, who was stirring porridge on the stove. He looked at her, nodded, and smiled. "Ah, you've seen her too," he said. "Not many do, but those who do never forget." Isla leaned in. "Who is she?" Her grandfather stirred the pot once, then twice, then paused. "Some call her a monster, but I never liked that word. She's a guardian of the Loch and of stories." He served the porridge, sprinkled a little cinnamon, and spoke again. "They say she's been here for hundreds of years, maybe longer. She watches, she listens, and sometimes, when the world is quiet, she shows herself." Isla listened, and for days afterward, she returned to the loch, morning after morning, eyes scanning the surface, ears tuned to the water. Nothing, until one evening, when the stars were beginning to twinkle, and the moon was rising pale and full. She sat by the shore, wrapped in a wool blanket. The loch shimmered in the moonlight. And then, a ripple, a long, graceful shape, moved through the water, slow, unhurried. It was her, Nessie, not close, not far, just there. She glided like a dream, dark against the silver light, leaving a soft wake behind. And Isla felt something, a calm, a knowing, as though the loch had shared a secret, just for her. That night, she dreamed of water, of ancient songs sung through ripples, of deep places filled with memory. In her dream, Nessie spoke, not with words, but with presence, with silence that felt full. She said, "Keep watch, keep wondering. The loch is old, but it remembers." The next morning, Isla woke rested. Light poured into her room. Her cat curled on her quilt, the world soft and slow. She kept her dream close, didn't tell anyone, not even her grandfather, because it wasn't just a sighting, it was a connection. Years passed. Isla grew taller, her hair darker. She studied science and folklore. She wrote stories, and always, the loch called her back. Sometimes she would bring friends and sit by the water, telling them the legends about a creature that watched, protected, waited. But she never tried to prove Nessie was real. because she didn't need to. Some truths are felt, not shown, and always, at dusk, she'd pause, look over the water, and wonder if Nessie was there, watching, as she always had. The Loch was her home, and in its depths, stories curled like mist, software patient, and full of peace. Sometimes, visitors would ask about Nessie, buy postcards, peer through binoculars, but rarely did they see anything, because they were searching with their eyes, not with their hearts. Isla knew that the Loch required stillness, respect, and listening. Not the kind of listening you do with ears, but the kind you do with your whole self. And when the wind quieted, when the moonlight danced on the surface, and the stars leaned close, that's when you might feel it. The presence, the watching, the gentleness beneath the waves. Nessie wasn't a monster. She was part of the land, of the mystery that makes the world feel wide and old. A reminder that not all things are meant to be explained. Some are meant to be felt, cherished, and left wild. So sleep now, knowing that far away, in the Highlands of Scotland, a loch lies still beneath the stars, its water deep and full of dreams. And somewhere, Nessie glides, slow, ancient, kind, keeping watch over the quiet, over the stories, over the sleep of anyone who chooses to believe. Good night, and may your dreams be full of gentle waters, and watchful eyes, and ancient wonders, that ask nothing of you, but rest, and stillness, and peace. Nessie's watchful waters, welcome. Tonight, we journey to the Highlands of Scotland, to a deep, mysterious, quiet loch, nestled between green hills, covered in mist and stories. This is the story of the Loch Ness monster, known to some as Nessie, known to others as just a ripple, or a shadow beneath the water, but always a presence, a mystery, a wonder. So breathe in and let the mist settle around your thoughts. Breathe out and let the cool air of the Scottish Highlands ease you into stillness. Our story begins in a small village, not far from the shores of Loch Ness. The village is quiet. Houses are built from stone, roofs sloped and weathered, windows glowing with soft light. The air smells of peat smoke and rain. There's a silence here, the kind that lives in places with history. And in this village lived a girl named Isla, with long auburn hair and curious green eyes. She was quiet, but her mind was always busy, wandering every morning. Before the sun rose, Isla would walk to the loch, She liked the way the sky mirrored in the still water, liked the hush of the world before it woke, and sometimes she would bring a book. Other times she would just sit and listen. One morning, the fog was thick. The world around her seemed faded, muted. She stood at the edge of the loch, her boots on damp moss, and she saw it, a shape, far out on the water, large, slow, almost drifting. It moved like a wave that had a mind of its own. She blinked, looked again. Nothing, just mist, and the usual stillness. But the image lingered, not in a scary way, but in a curious way, like a half-remembered dream. She told her grandfather, who was stirring porridge on the stove. He looked at her, nodded, and smiled. "Ah, you've seen her too," he said. "Not many do, but those who do never forget." Isla leaned in. "Who is she?" Her grandfather stirred the pot once, then twice, then paused. "Some call her a monster, but I never liked that word. She's a guardian of the Loch and of stories." He served the porridge, sprinkled a little cinnamon, and spoke again. "They say she's been here for hundreds of years, maybe longer. She watches, she listens, and sometimes, when the world is quiet, she shows herself." Isla listened, and for days afterward, she returned to the loch, morning after morning, eyes scanning the surface, ears tuned to the water. Nothing, until one evening, when the stars were beginning to twinkle, and the moon was rising pale and full. She sat by the shore, wrapped in a wool blanket. The loch shimmered in the moonlight. And then, a ripple, a long, graceful shape, moved through the water, slow, unhurried. It was her, Nessie, not close, not far, just there. She glided like a dream, dark against the silver light, leaving a soft wake behind. And Isla felt something, a calm, a knowing, as though the loch had shared a secret, just for her. That night, she dreamed of water, of ancient songs sung through ripples, of deep places filled with memory. In her dream, Nessie spoke, not with words, but with presence, with silence that felt full. She said, "Keep watch, keep wondering. The loch is old, but it remembers." The next morning, Isla woke rested. Light poured into her room. Her cat curled on her quilt. The world soft and slow. She kept her dream close. Didn't tell anyone, not even her grandfather, because it wasn't just a sighting. It was a connection. Years passed. Isla grew taller, her hair darker. She studied science and folklore. She wrote stories, and always, the loch called her back. Sometimes she would bring friends and sit by the water, telling them the legends about a creature that watched, protected, waited, but she never tried to prove Nessie was real because she didn't need to. Some truths are felt, not shown, and always, at dusk, she'd pause, look over the water, and wonder if Nessie was there, watching, as she always had. The Loch was her home, and in its depths, stories curled like mist, software patient, and full of peace. Sometimes, visitors would ask about Nessie, buy postcards, peer through binoculars, but rarely did they see anything, because they were searching with their eyes, not with their hearts. Isla knew that the Loch required stillness, respect, and listening. Not the kind of listening you do with ears, but the kind you do with your whole self. And when the wind quieted, when the moonlight danced on the surface, and the stars leaned close, that's when you might feel it. The presence, the watching, the gentleness beneath the waves. Nessie wasn't a monster. She was part of the land, of the mystery that makes the world feel wide and old. A reminder that not all things are meant to be explained. Some are meant to be felt, cherished, and left wild. So sleep now, knowing that far away, in the highlands of Scotland, a loch lies still beneath the stars, its water deep and full of dreams. And somewhere, Nessie glides, slow, ancient, kind, keeping watch over the quiet, over the stories, over the sleep of anyone who chooses to believe. Good night, and may your dreams be full of gentle waters, and watchful eyes, and ancient wonders that ask nothing of you but rest and stillness and peace. The Children of Lir. A long time ago, when forests were thick, when the rivers ran silver, and the skies glowed with the light of unseen magic, Ireland was a land of wonder. The Tuatha De Danann ruled then. They were not gods, but they were not quite mortal either. They were beings of great beauty and great power. One of them was Lir, a lord of the sea, tall and noble, wise and fierce, and full of love for his children. He had 4. Fionnuala, the eldest. She was thoughtful, strong of spirit, gentle in her words. Aud, her younger brother, bright-eyed, brave-hearted, quick with laughter, and the twins, Fiacre and Con, so alike they seemed made from the same breath, curious, loyal, always close. They lived in a hall of song and stone, where the sun streamed through stained windows and harpstrings hummed through the day. Their mother, Lir's first wife, had been beloved, but she passed away too soon. The land mourned with him. even the sky wept. To bring peace between Lir and the High King of the Tuatha De Danann. The king gave him another bride, Aoif, sister of the first. At first, she seemed kind. She walked the gardens with the children. She watched them at play. She smiled often. But something dark grew in her heart, a shadow fed by jealousy. The love between Lir and his children was deep, unbreakable, and she could not reach it. She began to dream of silence. She began to long for it. One morning, she gathered the children, wrapped in wool cloaks, placed gently in the chariot. She said they would visit their grandfather. The children were joyful. The horses ran swift. Their laughter rose into the sky. But the wheels slowed, and the forest grew quiet. As they reached the still waters of Lake Deravara, Ive stepped down. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with power. She raised her arms and spoke words of the old tongue, words heavy with enchantment, older than stone. A mist rose from the lake. A shiver passed through the air. The children cried out, but their voices were caught in a sudden wind. Feathers grew, wings spread, and in moments, 4 white swans floated on the surface, still with human hearts, still with memories, still able to speak. Aoif declared their fate. 300 years on Lake Deravara, 300 more on the cold sea of Moyle, and 300 more on the waters of Inis Glora. 900 years of exile and sorrow. And then she vanished. The children called for their father, but he was far, too far to hear them. And so the first 300 years passed. The lake was calm, and they sang to one another. They remembered warm halls and golden days. They flew over reeds and water lilies and whispered to the stars. When winter came, they huddled close, wings wrapped around each other. Then came the Sea of Moyle, dark and bitter, waves tall and wild. They were often apart, swept by storms, bruised by winds, but they called to one another and always found their way back, again and again, for centuries. Then came Inis Glora, a quiet island with soft grass and salt on the breeze. There they stayed, old and weary, but still together. The world had changed. The old gods had faded. The land no longer spoke with the same voice. One morning, they heard a sound, a bell, software and kind. It rang through the fog. A man stood on the shore, Saint Kalman. He saw the swans, and he knew their tale. He welcomed them, spoke gently, and held them in prayer, and the spell broke. Their feathers fell away. Their forms returned, but they were aged, so very aged. They lay in the grass, wrapped in warm cloth, Faces turned to the sky. They breathed once more, as humans, and then they rested. No longer cursed, no longer lost, but remembered to this day. If you walk by a still lake, and the mist hangs just right, you might hear swans singing a song of memory, a song of love, a song of home. Like the memory of a dream, the children of Lir are gone, but not forgotten. Close your eyes. Let their song carry you across still waters and into sleep. Good night. Get cozy and let's begin. The Cursed Treasure of Columbia City. Tonight, let me tell you a story, a slow and misty tale from a quiet riverside town, one with shadows and secrets, a story of treasure, of betrayal, and of a long sleep. Settle in, close your eyes, let the weight of the day soften. Let each word carry you further from waking and deeper into the past. The year was 1841. The wind smelled of salt and pine and moss off the edge of the wide Columbia River, where Oregon's forests stretch tall and the water glides smooth and dark. A ship arrived, a Spanish bark, weather-worn, her sails stained with sea spray. She anchored near the shore, right where Columbia City would one day rise. But then, there was only forest, only silence, and the steady whisper of the river. On board the ship, men whispered too, but not in peace, not with friendship. They had seen the cargo, gold, jewels, relics and riches, packed into heavy trunks, guarded carefully, but not carefully enough. The captain, a man of strong will and sharp eyes, was too late. The sailors struck him down. There, on the deck he once commanded. They took what they could carry and lowered it into the rowboats. Heavy trunks, wrapped bundles, and sacks filled with secrets. The mutineers landed on shore, the earth soft beneath their boots, the forest thick around them. They hid the treasure, somewhere on a stretch of land, later known as Hescopia's farm. They buried it quickly, nervously, hands shaking, voices rising, and then a fight. Arguments over who would take more, greed boiling over, and knives flashing in the fading light. Some say several men were killed, their bodies left where they fell, their share of gold never touched again. Before the night was done, smoke curled on the horizon, and figures appeared. The land was not empty. A group of native people moved in with their teepees, and their eyes watched everything. The mutineers waited, but the camp didn't leave, and the fear grew. They rowed back to their ship. They watched from the deck, waited for days, but the shore remained full of life and danger with no safe return. They sailed away. 2 long years passed, 2 years of wandering, drunken nights, fighting, and regrets that hung heavy on their backs. Then, a few of them returned, hollow-eyed, weary, and hopeful. The land was quiet now. No sign of teepees, no movement by the trees. They searched and searched, but the treasure was gone. No mound of dirt, no broken twig, no clue at all, as if it had sunk right through the ground. And the man, the one who had buried the goods, who had held the map in his memory, was missing, gone, as if the earth had swallowed him too. The years passed again, 40 and more. Columbia City grew from the soil. Houses, children, chickens in the yard. The legend lived in hushed voices, old men with shaking heads, stories told around stoves. Then, one night, in a quiet gathering, a spiritualist meeting was held. Candles flickered. A woman in white closed her eyes, and she spoke of a vision, of a buried truth. A group was formed. They followed her into the forest, to a quiet place where the moss grew thick. They dug, the spade hitting stone. Just under the surface, a broken slab. Then more, old, weathered, heavy. Then a cry and silence. One of the diggers had fallen, cold and still. The others froze. The medium whispered. The captain. He had claimed a soul for vengeance, for justice. The frightened group fled, leaving the stones, the story, and the silence behind. Years later, in 1890, another group returned, curious, brave, or foolish. They dug again, removed the rest of the stones, and beneath them, bones, white and old, twisted in the earth. Perhaps mutineers, perhaps the missing man. As they examined the remains, another man screamed, clutching his head, his mind unraveling in the moonlight. The search ended again, and this time, for good, today. They say the treasure still lies there, somewhere beneath Columbia City, but it is guarded, not by locks or walls, but by something older, something colder, a curse, they say. No one dares dig again. Not really, not for long, because when greed touches that ground, the ground remembers. So sleep now, and leave the gold to rest. Let the captain keep his watch. Let the ghosts whisper to the river, and let the past stay buried. As you drift, picture the quiet woods, the soft lapping of water, and the treasure, safe in the earth, where no one can reach, not tonight, not ever. Sleep, sleep, sleep.